Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode here from GuigLit, your one-stop shop for all things books, beards and beyond. Today my video will be covering English language, more specifically how to write a top grade article for Component 2 on English language. Now the advice itself covers all examination boards and it is worth taking on board in preparation for the GCSE examinations. So, if you haven't already, do be sure to give this video a thumbs up, be sure to share it with all your friends and classmates, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can always get updates on every latest video we deliver here at GuigLit. In addition, if you haven't already, be sure to go and show us some support across all our other social media platforms on Twitter, on Instagram and TikTok. So, what can you do with today's video? There are a number of different things that I would recommend as a teacher with over a decade's experience now. First of all, use this as an opportunity to take notes on best practice. Also, if you are possible or able to, ask a question in the comments. The GuigLit guarantee is that I do respond to every single comment I receive, and I'm immensely grateful for all of them. In addition, use this as a revision tool. You can watch this alone or with classmates. Suggest it to your teacher as something you could possibly watch as well as a class. It's a really useful tool. Adding to this, use it as a way to develop mind maps for planning, for example. I will be talking about planning later on. And don't forget, you can use this as a way of listing separate examples of how you can make best practice for how to write an article itself. So, some key details you want to notice about how one goes about writing an article. Now, this will be very similar to the other ones in my non-fiction 5 if you've watched them previously. And I would recommend you taking a look at them if you haven't already. But first of all, plan. Your audience and your purpose is really important. The best pieces I've ever read are planned. There's a really clear and obvious balance to that and an obvious plan. It could be three bullet points. Something as simple as that will suffice. Also, consider your tone. Who are you writing this for? Is this a younger audience or a mature adult audience? The audience is a real impact on tone and how it should be formal or informal. Following on from this, I'd recommend every article begins with a very bold title. Now, I'll be completely honest, I've typed mine today just for greater clarity so you can look at this in a much more simpler manner. However, if you were writing this with pen and paper, you'd want to capitalise it, maybe make it 2 lines high, just so it stands out as a clear heading. As well as this, follow this up with a subheading that includes the author's name. The author could be your name. You could create a persona or an alter ego by which you write your article, but this is the best way forwards. You want to have this immediately after the title itself. Produce an introduction passage that would lead into 3 developed interlinking paragraphs, each paragraph being its own point. I can't recommend that enough, so make sure you're doing that. Now, if you have enough time, I would recommend providing what I call a full circle kind of conclusion mini paragraph that links back to your introduction. There's a really effective way of doing that, so whatever you comment on at the start, you bring back to the end, so it ties it all up in a nice, neat little package for you. Now, the piece itself, whether you are on AQA, EDUCAS, EdExcel or any examination board, 60% of the marks are given for content. This is known as Assessment Objective 5. The remaining 40% of marks are provided for Assessment Objective 6. This is spelling, punctuation and grammar, or vocabulary, sentence structure and punctuation. They go by various different acronyms, but the fundamental point is the majority of the marks are awarded for content, with 40% awarded for the technical elements. And those technical elements aren't just spelling, it's full stops, it's punctuation, it's tense, and sentence structure, among other things. Do not include, now here's a couple of things I'd recommend not including in my experience. Obviously, we read far fewer articles, so some of these may not be so familiar to you, but whatever you do, do not write in columns. By that I mean dividing your page half and half, like you would in an old style newspaper article. There really is no point in doing that. You want to just do it as basic paragraphs as you do for any piece of writing. And my recommendation is not to include picture boxes. The reason I say not to include them is because if you are pressed for time, as many students tend to be, you really want to just focus on the content of the writing. The picture boxes are an afterthought, and it really only makes a difference in a very, very superficial level. It really is judged on the content of your writing above all else. So whatever you do, do not include those 2 things. Now, what is needed? Now, let's break down the 2 assessment objectives. AO5, content and organisation, as I mentioned before, includes The idea that communication at the top level is convincing and compelling, that I'm reading a strong opinion that is strongly expressed, but in a very articulate manner. In addition, the tone, the style and the register are assuredly matched, so it feels mature if it's for a formal audience. It has those elements of slang or colloquialisms if it is for a younger audience. Make sure you're using extensive and ambitious vocabulary. Don't let spelling put you off. Try to embolden your vocabulary and upgrade what it is you are doing. It's really important you actually have that. Finally, or rather on this point, varied and inventive use of structural features is really good. So firstly, secondly, lastly, to begin your paragraphs, for example, aren't bad, but you will do better by having something that is different to that. A lot of people go for that. So try and be inventive with it, but that means be creative. Your writing should be compelling, provide some complex ideas. Now, complexity only comes about if there's development, so make sure this piece is developed in and of itself. And lastly on this point, fluently linked paragraphs with seamlessly integrated discourse markers. This goes back to that bit I mentioned before about firstly, secondly, lastly. What you really want to be doing is to make sure that you're actually looking at this in a clear manner, but also making, using different connectives that others ordinarily wouldn't. The fluently linked aspect is really important there. Now, assessment objective 6 is technical accuracy, worth slightly less marks, whether it's out of 40 or 20, but it still has a huge impact. And the best way to look at this is through checking through your piece. I can't recommend that enough. I find in my experience not enough students do look back through their work. It costs them needless marks. So sentence demarcation is consistently secure and consistently accurate. This is for the top band. Consistently accurate. Notice that word consistently comes up twice in just one bullet point. As well as this, there's a wide range of punctuation, high level of accuracy, appropriate sentence forms for effect. Use standard English consistently, so there is no slang where there shouldn't be, and there's a high level of accuracy. Notice that a high level of accuracy in spelling, including ambitious vocabulary. It doesn't say it has to be inch perfect, so don't be afraid of making an error if that's going to stop you using language that you want to use. And finally, try that ambitious use of vocabulary, as is mentioned in AO5. AO5 and AO6 tend to have quite a seamless connection between the two of them. So don't be afraid of that. Just make sure you're really, as I say to my class, swinging for the fences, as it were. Really go for broke on that vocabulary and be as ambitious as you possibly can. So, the exam boards recommend the following. Now, the advice I've got here is taken from AQA specifically. However, I have looked at all the other examination boards in preparing for this material, and it really is the same recommendations across all of them. They recommend that candidates should briefly plan their responses before they begin writing. They recommend they should consider the content and their audience. Are you writing to adults? Are you writing to fellow teenagers? Are you writing to students? Who is it you're writing for? And aim your language and your development of your piece at them. Try to adopt an appropriate tone based on the intended audience and formality. Also, write enough to develop your ideas, opinions, or information effectively. Okay, it's about development. Some people have really good ideas and then they don't go anywhere with them. It's really heartbreaking as an English teacher to actually see that happen, because it shows that people are trying, but there's just not enough there yet. And lastly, pay more attention to technical accuracy, basic spelling errors. Do you know your it's with the apostrophe and without? Do you know the difference between there, and there? These are the sort of things that I don't like the phrase lose marks, but they limit expression. And in limited expression, we get limited potential. So, here's a task. It's taken from AQA, and obviously you'll notice the timings are slightly different. For example, you do Educast, it's a 30-minute task. Here it's a 45-minute. The task is as following. Homework has no value. Some students get it done for them, some don't do it at all. Students should be relaxing in their free time. Your task is to write an article for a broadsheet newspaper in which you explain your point of view on this statement. As you'll see, 60% of marks are awarded for content and organisation, with the 40% awarded for technical accuracy. So let's break this down. First of all, it's an article, as we know, and it's for a broadsheet newspaper. So look back at my previous tips, pause the video, go back through to see what they are to help you get an understanding of that. But it's a formal audience. Broadsheet newspaper meaning it's a formal adult audience, so it should be formal language. Now, explaining your point of view. Now, I've written today's one as today's model answer, sample model answer from the perspective of a student, but the importance is to have an element of explaining or persuading, to give yourself 3 ideas where you will explain your point of view. Do you agree or disagree with the statement? I always encourage students to quite strongly agree or disagree. I call it 90-10. By that I mean 90% of what you write will agree or 90% of what you write will disagree. So let's look at this. The plan itself should be really simple, just a series of bullet points. It should also, where an opinion is asked for, as today's example was, keep to what I call that 90-10 formula. By that I mean 90% of what you write will be one side, 10%, which should be no more than roughly a sentence to absolute maximum, should acknowledge the other side of the argument itself. But 3 bullet points will do, and they will be very effective. So let's take a look at the model answer sample I've provided here. Now, it is just a sample, it's not the finished piece, but it gives you a flavour of what is expected. So I start with a title saying home is for home, not work. I like wordplay in titles. I think it's quite a clever little aspect and quite original that students don't do a lot of. The idea of homework, and home and work. It is quite self-explanatory really, but it gets the idea, first of all, that it's acknowledging the task itself, and second of all, what it's doing really well here is it's giving a fixed opinion from the start. So it's agreeing with the statement provided. And then I provide I give myself an alter ego here or a pseudonym, and I've gone, Alex Roberts explains why homework is almost always a waste of time. Again, if you want to go back to my letter video where I talk about Dark Forest, there's a sense of emotive language. Almost always a waste of time for the vast majority of students. Notice those phrases, almost always and vast majority. There's my 90-10 coming through already. I'm showing that in the vast majority of cases, I disagree with the notion of it. I then use an imperative verb to begin my sort of introductory paragraph, picture the scene. So I'm commanding my audience, and then I will go through a number of different aspects to cover that. So what I end up doing is going through one particular aspect of the pointlessness of homework, and then I link them. So I go following on from this. Homework is also a barrier to enjoying the wider world. So there's an importance there in terms of what you have. And there's an importance there in terms of linking your paragraphs, providing evidence. I've used an anecdote in there as well. It's quite jam-packed already. However, it's only really getting on for half a piece there. You can use this as an answer sample to help you start your own response to the question provided. You can pause the video as well. May help you to do that in that instance. So there we go with the model's answer sample and my advice itself. But for now, thank you very much for all of your time today. Really appreciate it. Be sure to like, share and subscribe. Drop a comment. Don't forget the GuigLit guarantee. We are across different social media platforms, so just search GuigLit on all search engines to find out more. But until next time, all the very best. Take care and bye-bye.